This is the Action Hour, and I'm Lindsay Baker, and I'm very happy today to present to you Jake Davis, who is a Colorado-based attorney who works with the Nonhuman Rights Project. And this organization is very, very interesting because you have some historical legislation that you have in the works that has never been enacted before for animals, and that is to have them become non-human persons. Is that basically right, Jake?
Yeah, so we are a multifaceted organization in the sense that we seek to enact legislation that recognizes non-human animals as rights holders, in effect, legal persons that can bring lawsuits and challenge situations where they're confined or experimented on in ways that us humans wouldn't be. We also work in the court system trying to enact these same changes. And then we have an educational component to our organization where we do things like this. We talk about our mission and our accomplishments and try to bring more people into the fold, if you will.
Right, and I understand that you guys are going to be having a fundraiser in the Los Angeles area. And I'm very interested to getting the word out about that out to our audience. So what I would like to do now is start off and show a couple of videos about the founder and how he came about the idea of gaining non-human rights for animals. So let's watch these videos.
Legal person. Humans and legal persons are not synonymous. On the one side, there have been many human beings over the centuries who have been legal things. Slaves were legal things. Women, children were sometimes legal things. Indeed, a great deal of civil rights struggle over the last centuries has been to punch a hole through that wall and begin to feed these human things through the wall and have them become legal persons. But alas, that hole has closed up. Now, on the other side are legal persons, but they've never only been limited to human beings. For example, there are many legal persons who are not even alive. In the United States, we're aware of the fact that corporations are legal persons. In pre-independence India, a court held that a Hindu idol was a legal person, that a mosque was a legal person. In 2000, the Indian Supreme Court held that the holy books of the Sikh religion was a legal person. And in 2012, just recently, there was a treaty between the indigenous peoples of New Zealand and the Crown in which it was agreed that a river was a legal person who owned its own riverbed. Now, I read Peter Singer's book in 1980 when I had a full head of lush brown hair, and indeed I was moved by it because I had become a lawyer because I wanted to speak for the voiceless, defend the defenseless, and I'd never realized how voiceless and defenseless the trillions, billions of non-human animals are. And I began to work as an animal protection lawyer. And by 1985, I realized that I was trying to accomplish something that was literally impossible. The reason being that all of my clients, they're all the animals whose interests I was trying to defend were legal things.
I love that tape because I think it really explains where the heart of the issue is. And the fact that he talked about them as things, as, you know, and that is something very expendable. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit, if you would?
I think what Steve is getting at there is that, well, the only entities that can challenge situations that may befall them are legal persons. And so all, for the most part, non-human animals in this country and throughout the world are legal things. They aren't recognized within the law as legal persons. And so we more or less can do with them as we please. And that leads to situations like captivity, abuse, neglect. And so Steve is drawing a comparison between non-human animals today and slaves from hundreds of years ago, or perhaps women and children before then, entities that within the law weren't recognized as individuals that could bring cases and challenge situations that were less than ideal for them.
Right. Well, I mean, look at today with women in Iran. I mean, they're still going, the battle goes on, and
Sure.
we won't have it for humans if we don't at least consider animals, right? Let's watch the next video.
So for centuries, there's been a great legal wall that separates legal things from legal persons. On one hand, legal things are invisible to judges. They don't count in law. They don't have any legal rights. They don't have the capacity for legal rights. They are the slaves. On the other side of that legal wall are the legal persons. Legal persons are very visible to judges. They count in law. They may have many rights. They have the capacity for an infinite number of rights, and they're the masters.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to talk now a little bit about the litigation and why this idea sounds so good on paper, but yet it's so hard to get people to think that way. So, and then I want to get into some of the litigation, but if you would, speak about that for a moment.
So the problem with the cases we bring in the eyes of the opposition and judges, perhaps, is that they believe that in granting our requested relief to a non-human animal, they're going to be opening what's called the floodgates and allowing any non-human animal to bring a case in order to try its liberty, equality, or bodily integrity status. And what that all means is a judge saying, okay, an elephant shouldn't be in a zoo. That is going to establish precedent for, let's say, a moth in your home to be able to bring a case if it's killed, or an insect, or any other smaller type of animal. But the reality is the cases that we bring are steeped in decades of science, decades of study, and the claims that we make pair an entity like an elephant, say, with a human's cognition. And so for a judge to say we can't rule in your client's favor and free it from a zoo, it doesn't naturally follow from the premise of the argument, because we aren't and never could bring a case for an insect or a fish or perhaps even livestock. And so that's kind of where the fear lies.
So what you're saying, and I don't know if particularly vegans would totally agree with this to the full extent, but that only certain animals should be non-human persons, or like where is the line drawn, and then who draws that line? I think that is
that's a great question. The line is drawn by the science, and so the scientists are the ones that draw the line. The elephant cases that we bring, they have decades upon decades of field research that have gone into them. Our experts come in and say elephants are autonomous, they're cognitively complex, they're similar to humans in many ways because of years upon years of field research. As of today, we just don't have that science for many other non-human animal species. And so that's why our clients are so limited to primates, elephants, and orcas, because that's where the science has gone. Maybe one day there will be science as robust as these species for other animals, say, I don't know, horses, pigs, cows, maybe even a moth, but we're just not at that point yet.
Right. So we do have a slide here. I don't know. I don't think that's the one I wanted to. Yeah, this is the one I wanted to show. So your current clients are chimpanzees and elephants, and other potential clients include orangutan, bonobos, gorillas, it's tiny, so excuse me, dolphins and whales. They are members of species for whom there is robust, abundant scientific evidence. Yes, you state this on your website. Self-awareness is the capacity to recognize yourself as an individual separate from the environment and other individuals. Well, you know, I mean, people would argue that livestock are the same. So it is a difficult, I'm just saying it's a difficult line. I would not want to be the one drawing the line. Of course, you know, there are different levels of awareness when we get down to insects, et cetera. And then, yeah, it's a very complex subject, an interesting subject. And I really think it's going to be something that's going to be considered a lot going forward, because there's so many people that are gaining awareness about animals and the suffering of animals and how inhumane that is. And not only inhumane, but it's really destroying our environment, and
Sure.
It's basically killing us, particularly animal agriculture. which is a big thing that we talk about here. So let's talk maybe a little bit about some of the legislation. How do you feel about that? Is there a particular one you'd like to talk about, case that you might want to talk about?
The Nonhuman Rights Project recently introduced its first federal legislative initiative, and that is what's called the SWIMS Act, and it's an amendment to the Marine Mammal Protection Act introduced by Representative Adam Schiff and a number of others. And what it would do, more or less, is it would prohibit the taking and keeping of non-human animals such as false killer whales, belugas, and orcas. And so it would be an end to captivity for those species.
Wow. And what is the pushback, and what is some of how far along are you on this?
So the initiative was just introduced.
Sorry.
I don't work on the legislative side of things, so I can't say for certain, where the bill lies in the process that is Washington. Mm-hmm. But what I can say is the pushback is a financial, economic interest. Captors of these species don't want to see their ability to take them from the wild and display them stopped. And that's really what it comes down to. In most situations, it's a financial argument.
It always is. It always is. There's a case going on right now, the pig trial, rescued baby pig trial. Are you familiar with that? DXE and Right to Rescue?
I've been watching it.
Oh, yeah, it's an amazing trial. And the whole thing comes down to financial. We don't want to get off topic, but yeah, that is always the case. And the same goes for, I've done a lot of stories on the elk. I've done stories on the wolves. I've done stories on so many different species that are dying because the land is being encroached. Wild horses, the land is being taken away from them for cattle ranching, which is based on making money because it's not good for our health. So, and we know it's not good for the environment. So anyway, back to the story. This is so intriguing. Maybe let's go to the website. I would love to play the unlocking, a little bit of this. I can't play the whole thing, but let's play some of this. Hang on one second.
The chimpanzee understands that tomorrow he's going to be in prison. And as far as he knows, it's not going to end. What we're trying to do is change the way people view non-human animals. Because right now, it's, are you a human? You have rights. You're not a human, you don't. And we're saying that's wrong.
Now to a bizarre lawsuit with big implications, and the key question is whether a chimp is a person.
Tommy is a legal thing right now and has a right to get out of being held for his entire life in a cage.
When I began, people laughed at me and they barked when I went into a courtroom.
They are not human beings, and putting them on the same legal standing as a human being, that's insanity.
So we may be coming to you to help us in filing an affidavit, talking about the cognitive abilities that would persuade courts.
Question. Visitors have balls.
Oh my God. Merlin died last night.
Captivity, it's just killing these guys. So we need to locate every surviving chimpanzee in New York State and file a suit on their behalf. Someone told me you had a monkey.
There's a chimp in there. He's got TV to watch. Yeah, he won't do much. He just sits there.
May it please the court. Tommy is indeed a person who is entitled.
You assert he's a person. We haven't decided that.
All we can do is kick the first door open.
Mr. Weiss, you want to come to our court and ask for a right that's never been granted in the history of humankind.
It's a hell of a war. There's going to be a lot of battles in the war. But it's time to begin.
Wow. And of course, people could go to the website under Our Story and find that. We're going to be showing the website in a little bit. So we'll show you exactly how to get there. There'll also be a link at the top. So if you're just joining us, I am here with Jake Davis of the Nonhuman Rights Project. And Jake is an attorney for that organization, and we are here having a discussion. And Jake, from watching that little video that we just saw, the comment was made by Stephen Weiss that they barked when he came in the room initially. Going back, this was in the 1980s, I believe, when he started his work out of college, out of finishing his law school, etc. And just, do you feel, and this is more of a personal question, do you feel like the attitude has changed a lot? And particularly, I would say, in the younger generations, people that you interact with, do you find that they are more prone to ridiculing or sort of understanding where you're coming from when you talk about this with your peers?
I think the legal landscape has shifted significantly since Steve started his work, evidenced by the case that we just brought on behalf of Happy the Elephant, where we got to the highest court in New York and two judges more or less said they would have released Happy and wrote lengthy dissents, which attacked the majority opinion that Happy couldn't be released. So not only is the younger generation more reticent to agreeing with us, but the older generation, judges that have been in the court system for many years, are starting to understand our arguments and appreciate what we're arguing and even agreeing with us. So we are making progress. We are winning, some battles.
That's really good to hear. I was going to say common decency. Come on. I think even in this other court case, the judge is just, he's starting to cave because as a human being, you cannot deny this when you look in the eyes of these individuals, and particularly elephants. And these are next, I was going to say kissing cousins, but people would probably laugh if I said that, but they're next to us. They're very close to us. I think all animals, I was reading something like it's just a small shift of a chromosome, and then of course there's other complexities to it, that we are so different, we think we're so different, we're not that different than animals was the point.
No, we share nearly 97% of the same DNA as chimpanzees. So we are as close to chimpanzees as we could probably be.
Yeah. Let me show here if anybody isn't able to stay on and would like to get in touch. This is where you can reach. It's the nonhumanproject.org. And it's www.nonhumanrights.org is actually the correct address. And I'll just leave this up on the screen for a second. We're going to talk about, you just mentioned the elephants clients that you're representing. And I have some pictures here of the enclosure. And a lot of times what they seem to say is that there's no place to send them that would be better and that the zoos are doing a great job. I think people should have a little bit of the background of at least this case. Just correct me if I'm right. This is the case we're talking about. And they were taken from this large group of elephants from a sanctuary where they were with other elephants. 39. Go ahead. You take it.
Sure. So our elephant clients in California, Amali, Nawalzi, and Basmusi, Amali and Nawalzi, they were kidnapped from the wild in Swaziland, now I think Eswatini, and they were imported to America and put in zoos. Basmusi was in his mother's womb when she was kidnapped from the wild previously, and he was born in captivity. But yes, the argument that there's not a better place to go is just a lie. The zoos lie often about many things. There are 2 accredited elephant sanctuaries in the United States that would provide immense space for these elephants to live and flourish and recognize their autonomous nature. One of them is actually in California, so it's a little ironic that the zoo would say there isn't a better place for them, but that's what zoos do. They mislead and they downplay the suffering that the animals in their quote-unquote care go through on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with Zoonasia. I always like when we're talking about zoos, and I love that we're staying general and not talking specifically about one or the other, but people say, well, zoos are, they have conservation programs and they have education programs. And I was wondering if you would like to weigh in on that.
Yeah,
You know, like the way they talk about the benefits of these zoos for people and for the animals are so well taken care of.
right. I mean, there are probably many zookeepers who do care for the animals, but notwithstanding those individuals, the idea that zoos provide conservation or, welfare value is total BS. It's just not true. It's wrong. And the science shows that. Animals that go to zoos, especially elephants, they aren't living at the zoos. They are beginning the process of dying. And that's why so many elephants in zoos exhibit stereotypies, which are the swaying and the rocking and the bobbing, which a lot of uneducated people think is an elephant dance. You hear that when you go to zoos. You see people telling their children that the elephant's dancing. What's happening to the elephant is that its cognitive nature, its physiology is deteriorating. It's more or less dying in front of your eyes. So one of our experts put it astutely. He said, elephants in zoos aren't elephants, they're just artifacts. And I think that's the best way to categorize what the zoo environment does to elephants specifically. It begins the process of their deterioration. And there are many ways you can learn about animals. You don't need to see them in zoos to learn anything about them. In fact, you could go on YouTube. If you are lucky enough to have the means, you can see them in the wild. But if you can't get to Africa, which most people cannot, you can learn through educational resources. And we always make this comment when talking about this topic. It's, children know more about dinosaurs than they do about any animals that are alive today. And so that the same efforts that can be described for teaching children about dinosaurs can be put forth about any animals. And so it's just wrong to say that you can't learn about an animal if it's not in a zoo.
I agree. Here, let's play another little clip that will give insight from one of the staff members of your organization when she went to visit at the zoo.
Hi everyone, I'm in New York City this week, so I thought I would come and see Happy at the Bronx Zoo. This is the first time I am inside riding the monorail, and the photos don't do it justice. She is in the smaller of the two exhibits today. We haven't seen Patty yet. I assume she's in the even smaller barn behind the exhibit, and it's just so... It's sad just to see her in a corner against the fence.
Yeah, I think you were mentioning that the space looks very different. It looks bigger. And also, I don't think we've touched upon the so-called improvements where they go in and put trees and other things in. But in reality, if you look close, such as in some of the photos, if you want to touch on that, I'll show the photos.
Yeah, absolutely. Zoos do a great job of making their enclosures look natural, but the reality of it is elephants need space. They have evolved to move great distances and to move across varied terrain. And so the zoo can't provide any space whatsoever. It can't provide varied terrain because inevitably the elephant just comes back to where it started its small lap around the enclosure. And for the most part, in zoos, they keep the elephants from engaging with the foliage by wrapping it in wire, sometimes electrically charged, sometimes not. But if you look at the picture that's on the screen now, you'll see the chains around the tree. In other pictures, you see, small barbs on the branches. So
and you see in this picture the elephant trying to interact with a tree, like their natural instinct is to rub on the tree, and where's the mud that they love, and where's does it have
everything natural about the elephant is taken from it in the zoo environment. They're given their meals on a regular schedule for the most part. They have very little autonomy. They can't engage with the world in a way they evolved to. It would be like one of us being taken and put in solitary confinement for having committed no crime and told, oh, you need to flourish and you need to live the same life you would in the real world here in this cell. There's really no difference. That's the comparison.
Right. And then that kind of leads us to the next question about education. Maybe, do you want to talk a little bit about some of those programs?
Yeah, so I'm not too familiar with the programs that zoos do offer, but like I mentioned previously, children,
Oh, I was talking about your organization, because
I see.
sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so the educational component is just this. We go on, television or webcasts or present in front of college or high school students and talk about our organization and our mission. So that's really the educational component, just trying to get the word out there, trying to basically educate people on what captivity does to our clients, elephants, primates, and cetaceans, because a lot of people think that they're okay in these environments, in part because, like we just touched on, the way that the environments look. But the reality is these animals are dying the minute they're brought to captivity. That's why the mortality rate for elephant calves in captivity is so high. I mean, the elephants don't even have the ability to have offspring. It's very sad and unfortunate.
And so has this, now in some of the cases, I don't know if you know or not, but I'll throw this out there, has this been allowed to be presented to a judge or to I don't think you've gone to a jury case, but has it been allowed to be presented? And what's the blocking? I mean, if you start to hear the facts, as you say, you're based on years and years and years of studies and research and white papers, etc., then how can they deny this? And how does the court system get a...
Litigation is a more narrow focus than what I've been touching on. Unfortunately, there are laws that permit the keeping of animals in these abhorrent conditions, and that's kind of the animal welfare standard in this country. We've made progress in that regard, but obviously not enough. What we do at the Non-Human Rights Project is we try to get the court to recognize our clients' rights, which would mean the end of their captivity. And because of what I mentioned at the beginning of our discussion about judges being scared of the floodgates opening up, they're very hesitant in granting our requested relief. They think if they say, let's take Happy, for example, she can go to an elephant sanctuary, then tomorrow thousands of New Yorkers will be bringing cases on behalf of everything from an insect to a lion. And that's not how the law works. And that's, I think, the wrong assessment of our case, but that's kind of where we are. That's where the impasse really lies. It's the fear that recognizing a right for one of our clients will open the doors to endless lawsuits on behalf of other non-human animals.
There's a comment here from, this viewer seems to be familiar, but let's see what you think. Judge Rowan D. Wilson said the court had a duty to recognize Happy's right to petition for her liberty, not just because she is a wild animal who is not meant to be caged and displayed, but because the rights we confer to others define who we are as a society. I agree with that. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I would comment by saying I agree wholeheartedly with that assessment. I mean, the law is what needs to control the findings of the court, but at the same time, we have a duty to evolve that law to meet standards of society as those standards progress. I mean, take the slave context, for example. We realized far too late, but nonetheless realized that slavery was wrong. And courts, when the populace started to push back against that practice, started to also recognize that it was wrong. And so that comment by Judge Wilson is very observant and I think very accurate and to the point.
Right, now I want to show, I'm going to bring this onto the screen, and this is again your website. I'm over on here, and the legal first, I think we did touch on it, but let's just go through a couple of these. We don't have to go into detail. I do want to tell people if they come to your website and I'm on the progress page, that there is a TED Talk. I don't know if you guys can see it. So, you can see my cursor here. You see TED Talk? That, if you click there, you will go to the full talk that was given about this whole subject by Stephen Wise. And you can find out a lot more information. But we want to give Jake a chance here to talk. So, Jake, can you just go into this a little bit, however, whatever you wish to speak about here. In the legal
Yeah, so
terms.
we were fortunate enough to be the first organization to have what's called an order to show cause issued on behalf of a non-human animal, and that occurred in one of our chimpanzee cases. And then we had an order to show cause issued on behalf of our elephant client, Happy. What that all means is the courts in both those cases agreed to hear our arguments on behalf of freeing those non-human animals, and that was a legal first in the world. And so that kind of got the ball rolling, the chimpanzee case specifically, to where we are today, which is now high court judges basically stating outright that they think that our client should be freed. And so we're chipping away at that wall that Steve mentioned in his TED Talk that prohibits the recognition of rights for non-human animals. Every case we bring, we get a little closer to the court agreeing with us. So in time, we'll ultimately be able to overcome that obstacle, and our clients will be freed. And I think society will change for the better as a result.
Yes, I think so too. And maybe we'll stop killing each other or being in so-called nuclear apocalypse or whatever horrific things are going on where things get out of hand. Wow, this is so interesting. What have we not covered? We're almost through our time, believe it or not. What have we not covered that you would like to personally present to our audience?
I would just like to read some language that Judge Ginny Rivera provided in her dissent in Happy's case. And it echoes what you mentioned and what the viewer mentioned about Judge Wilson's dissent. But she said that Happy's captivity is inherently unjust and inhumane. And it's an affront to a civilized society. And every day that Happy remains a captive, in other words, a spectacle for humans, we too, as a society, as human society, we're diminished. And I think that gets to the heart of everything that we're doing.
That is incredibly powerful, and that came from a judge. So I think things are going in the right direction, and you guys are pioneers, and you are getting to the root of the problem. You know, there's a long, long way to go, but this is so encouraging. I do want to tell people again to visit the website as usual. All of the links will be pinned at the top for how to get in touch with you, how to take your organization, and how to take action. So that will all be there for our viewers. Please share out this video. That helps so much. So many more people will become informed. And we would love to have you and some of the rest of your team back on closer to when the fundraiser is here so that we can help spread the word, because I think once people in this area get to know about it, they're all going to want to get involved. So folks, don't wait till then. Get involved now. Go ahead, go over to their website and take some action for these lovely sentient beings. Jake, thank you so much for being on today. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.